right, here we go. So I don't know what number at this point, but these videos are specifically for my students at Cedar Trappist High School. So if you're one of my students, great. If you're not one of my students, hello. Let's jump into this. So today's lesson is on factoring, specifically factoring when the leading coefficient is 1. There's 3 examples that I picked from the assignment that my students should be doing today, March 24th. And yeah, here we go. Question number 20 is from your textbook. It says factor y squared minus 3y minus 18. So if I'm taking a look at this polynomial right here, first thing that I notice is the leading coefficient. I don't physically see a number in front of my first term. So then that means that my leading coefficient is actually the number 1. That's nice, because if my leading coefficient is 1, that means I can jump straight into using the x method. I'm going to pause this real quick. And we're back. Here we go. So in order to use x method, I need to identify 2 things, the middle coefficient and the constant. Middle coefficient is going to be the number value that is in front of my middle term. So my middle term here is negative 3y, so my middle coefficient is going to be that negative 3. Then I have to identify the constant. The constant is going to be the term that does not have a variable attached to it, so it's a number all by itself. And in this case, it's negative 18. Once I have those 2, I'm going to go ahead and draw my x like I did here. My constant is going to go right here at the top of the x. My middle coefficient is going to go at the bottom. Once I have that set up, these 2 numbers, I just hit myself. These 2 numbers right here, this one and this one, you have to think of 2 numbers that when I multiply them, they'll give me negative 18. But when I add or combine them, they'll give me negative 3. So let's think about those numbers. And here they are. So negative 6 and 3. When I multiply those 2 numbers, that's going to give me negative 18. But if I were to combine the 2, it would be negative 6 plus 3. Why plus? Because my 3 is positive. So negative 6 plus 3 will still give me negative 3. Once I have that, I can take those 2 values that I have in red, and I'm going to write them in factored form. And here it is. All right, so I took these 2 values right here from my x method, and I rewrote them in factored form. Notice that I use the variable y. Where did I get that y from? From the polynomial that I had in the original problem. So if your original problem, say your polynomial has the variable x, or has a variable a or b, or any variable you could think of, okay, that is the variable that you are going to be placing as the first term inside of these parentheses. And there it is. That's how you factor question number 20. Moving on to question number 24. All right, so for questions 24 and forward, the questions might look a little bit different, but don't let that freak you out. This is question number 24. So for question number 24, you have a normal polynomial, which is this part right here, but then it's equal to 0. I know the instructions say to solve, but we're not going to do that at this point. We're only focusing on factoring. So if this part right here, if your polynomial is equal to 0, so you see a 0 right here at the end, then just go ahead and use x method. So I'm going to continue and pretend that I don't even have this here, and I'm going to focus on the polynomial and use x method to solve it. All right, so this is what the problem would look like once I start setting it up for x method. I identify my middle coefficient, I identify my constant, I place, that's the wrong side. This side. I place my constant at the top of the x, my middle coefficient at the bottom, and then I already went ahead and filled this one in because this one's a simple one. 2 numbers that when I multiply them, they give me 10, 5 and 2. But when I add them, they give me 7. So pretty straightforward. Last thing that I need to do here is just write it in factored form. And there it is. All right, so that is how you answer question number 24. Moving on to 28. All right, so this is the question that you are supposed to factor on question number 28. Notice how I have my 2 terms right here. There's an equal sign, and then I have my negative 14 all the way on the other side. So in the previous example, question number 24, we had a 0 over here. So I want to